But maybe this is not enough for you as evidence. So, let's go deeper, because over here, we don't spread wishes and lies to our community. We come with receipts from true scientific research and show everything. Remember that Metatron claimed to have worked with a whole team of linguists and anthropologists, etc. But have you noticed that none of these people have really been useful in his whole video? His linguists did not even tell him where was located the land of origins of Afro-Asiatic languages, since he believed that it was at the border of Egypt and Asia, and his anthropologist has been absent. He mentioned him, but none of what he has presented us in his video actually uses anthropology. Despite his random Greek quotes, there is nothing really scientific about that video. He spent more time destroying the image of Quilimica and talking about irrelevant topics than bringing scientific evidence. That's just another technique to make it look deeper than it actually is. It's just smoke. There's absolutely nothing behind. But maybe you think I'm joking. Let's go deeper. As I taught Aslan the TikToker in this video, people's facial phenotype is not determined by genetics or wishes. It is determined by analysis of their bodies by anthropologists. So, what does anthropology tell us about the ancient Egyptians? Well, let's start slow. Let's start with their bodies. The University of Cambridge realized a study on body proportions of ancient Egyptians using skeletons from Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom pharaohs such as Thutmose I, the Second, the Third, and the Fourth. Queen Hatshepsut, Tutankhamun, Seti I, and Ramses II. They concluded that Egyptian rulers' body proportions were super-negroid, resulting in evolving in the African hot climate. From the early dynasties to the late indigenous pharaohs, meaning that they were even more negroid than most modern black people. Let's pause here. Guys, I'm not talking about random people or Nubians here. I want it to be clear. You understand that we are talking about the pharaohs, right? Tutankhamun, Ramses, etc. They look like black people, not whites. It is even written in the studies here by white experts who actually exist. Not like those of Metatron. Okay? And I want to remind you that modern Egyptians are not super-negroid as attested by Sonia Zakshevsky. Here you have the receipts. All sources will be in the caption. Now let's talk about their facial structures. Because people's faces are determined by their bone structures, not DNA or wishes. That's why all dark-skinned people are not necessarily part of the same ethnic groups. What does the data say? Well, let's watch this.
Who were the Bedarians? Most experts, like Sonia Zakrzewski, demonstrated that ancient Egypt's development was primarily indigenous. That is, the individuals who built that civilization already lived in that territory right before its appearance. Who were they? According to studies, a few major cultural groups inhabited in the area before the dynastic period. The Bedarians were among them. They lived in Middle Egypt. So, what did they look like? Numerous Western anthropologists who studied them provided answers. They discovered that the Bedari people had short cranial vaults and significant subnasal prognathism, which is the anterior projection of the lower face relative to the upper face. This feature is the most observed among black Africans, contrary to other groups who have little to no prognathism. So, Egypt's indigenous inhabitants, the Bedarians, were black Africans. This type of skulls have also been discovered in all locations surrounding Egypt. It's also clearly apparent on Egypt's most iconic monument, the Great Sphinx. However, this is the topic of our next video. Like, subscribe and activate the bell.
So, from what we know, the data says that not only ancient Egyptians' bodies were more negroid than those of modern black people, their skulls also had that particular negroid-shaped characteristic of black Africans. If you doubt that, all you have to do is look at the Great Sphinx. He is there, still standing with his beautiful subnasal prognathism. Does this really look like a northern Indian? Here we are talking about dynastic Egypt. Not Egypt after it was invaded and controlled by foreigners. The statement about some late ancient Egyptians' hair looking like Indians are not that crazy. Why? Because that is something I have always said. Especially in this video about their hair. Eric Krubazy, who is a real expert, who actually exists, not some ghost anthropologist, studied the ancient Egyptians' mummies. He concluded that what was in the beginning remained all over dynastic Egypt. The major changes only occurred during the Greco-Roman period. And guess when these European scholars highlighted by Metatron lived? During the Greco-Roman period, after these changes occurred. We don't even know if the people they saw were true Egyptians. So, everything Metatron said is completely irrelevant, as I have already proved it by comparing the scholars earlier. Now, let's talk about the last element of what determines people's phenotype and that Metatron has pushed all over his video. What was ancient Egyptian skin color? Metatron says that they were tanned. But looking at their art, we see that 99% of their art shows black, brown, or reddish-brown color, meaning that brown was the average color. It is not tanned, but brown. But as I said earlier, there is a difference between a tanned person and a black person who is packed with melanin. It lays in the amount of melanin in their skin. Chikanta Diop said that after testing the skin of some mummies in his laboratory, the evaluation of melanin levels allowed him to classify the ancient Egyptians unquestionably as blacks. But I know that many people hate Diop and call him an Afrocentrist. And you know what? Let's assume that it is true. Let's find something else, okay? Well, in 2005, Dr. Anna Maria Makota and Dr. Vermeeren analyzed mummies of nobles in ancient Egypt. We are not talking about some random mummies discovered in the Delta during the late period. We are not talking about some Nubian mummies discovered in Sudan. We are talking about nobles, people of the high society of Kemet, powerful people, indigenous Egyptians, living in the capital city of Thebes. In other words, there are no higher status than these people in ancient Egypt except the royals. Not one, not three, but 273 mummies of nobles who lived during the New Kingdom, the golden age of the Egyptian civilization, from the 18th to the 22nd dynasty. These dates are very important because they precede the so-called Nubian invasion of Kemet. So, here Egypt is under full Egyptian control, and the power is centralized in Thebes, under a native Egyptian pharaoh, the same city where these nobles lived and were buried. And what did the analyzers say? Well, here's what the scholars concluded. Skin sections showed particularly good tissue preservation, although cellular outlines were never distinct. Although much of the epidermis had already separated from the dermis, the remaining epidermis often was preserved well. The basal epithelial cells were packed with melanin, as expected for specimens of Negroid origin. Do we have to go deeper, or should we stop here? Do we need comments? This further debunks all Metatron's wishful thinking. It is in perfect alignment with everything I say in my videos. Ancient Egypt was a black civilization with a black population, but especially a black African elite who came from the south. And it has been this way from the beginning to its collapse. And this is confirmed by ancient Europeans' depictions of ancient Egyptians. We can see here. Priests were also part of the nobility. So, this is not a tan. It is melanin. Now I want to address something that really bothered me in Metatron's video. I hope you enjoy the shared information. So, what do you conclude after watching this video? Do you agree with me? Is the ethnic stock of the ancient Egyptians clear? Do we have enough data to make a strong assessment, or are we deceiving ourselves? Let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you agree or disagree with me. Provide specific examples or details so I can learn from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, activate the bell, and share the video so more people can learn this truth. Thanks for watching this video, and see you in the next one.